The stars looked different from the bridge of the U.S. Relentless. Captain John Carter stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the unfamiliar planet grow larger on the main screen. This was humanity's first venture so far from Earth, and nobody knew what they might find. "Incoming transmission, Captain," said Lisa Wright, the communications officer. Her fingers moved quickly across her console. "Put it through," Carter ordered. The screen flickered, revealing a creature unlike anything the crew had seen before. It had blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer with moisture, large eyes set wide apart, and gill-like structures on its neck that pulsed gently. "Greetings, Earth vessel," the creature said in perfect English. "I am Kelfar, Prime Minister of Lyria. We welcome you to our system." Carter stepped forward. "I'm Captain John Carter of the Earth Defense Force vessel U.S. Relentless. We come in peace and friendship." The first meeting with the Lyrians went better than anyone could have hoped. They were a peaceful species who had mastered advanced medical technology, but developed few weapons. They had been watching Earth for decades, learning human languages and customs through transmitted signals. Within days, an Earth delegation landed on the Lyrian homeworld. Ambassador Lisa Wright led the team, quickly forming a bond with Kelfar. "Your people and mine have much to offer each other," Kelfar said as they walked through a garden of strange, glowing plants. "But I must warn you about the Galactic Council." Wright stopped walking. "The Galactic Council? We've never heard of them. They control most of the known galaxy. 7 species who believe themselves superior to all others." Kelfar's gills fluttered, and what Wright had learned was a sign of worry. They do not welcome new spacefaring races, especially ones as resourceful as humans appear to be. Back on the Relentless, Intelligence Officer Kevin Murray was the first to decode the strange signals they had been picking up since entering Lyrian space. "Captain, you need to see this," Murray said, showing Carter his findings. "These are Council communications. They're discussing the Lyrian homeworld, and they don't sound friendly." Carter studied the translations with a growing sense of unease. "Have you shown this to anyone else?" "No, sir. Just you. Keep it that way for now. I need to speak with Ambassador Wright immediately." On the planet's surface, Wright and Kelfar were finalizing the details of a mutual defense pact between Earth and Lyria. "This agreement will benefit both our worlds," Wright said. "Earth can provide military protection, and Lyria can share its medical advances." Kelfar's large eyes blinked slowly. "The Council will not be pleased. They may see this as a challenge to their authority." "Let them," Wright replied. "Earth doesn't recognize their authority over us or your people." When Captain Carter arrived with Murray's findings, the mood changed quickly. "These communications suggest the Council is planning something against Lyria," Carter explained, showing Wright and Kelfar the decoded messages. Kelfar's skin paled to a lighter blue. "This confirms my fears. The Council has always viewed us as useful but inferior. They value our medical knowledge but resent our independence." Wright placed a hand on Kelfar's arm. "This makes our new alliance even more important. Earth stands with Lyria." The signing ceremony took place the next day. As representatives from both worlds made the agreement official, Murray continued monitoring Council communications. The signals had changed. There were more of them now, and they contained military codes that even the best Earth computers struggled to break. Whatever the Council was planning, it was moving forward quickly. "Captain," Murray said when Carter returned to the ship, "I think we need to prepare for trouble. The Council forces are on the move, and based on their communications patterns, they're gathering near Lyrian space." Carter nodded grimly. "Alert Earth Command. Tell them we may have made new friends, but we've also made powerful enemies. And I think we're going to meet them very soon." 3 weeks after the signing of the Earth-Lyrian Alliance, a message arrived from the Galactic Council. They wanted a meeting. Admiral Susan Hayes of the Earth Fleet was chosen to lead the human delegation alongside Peter Grant, a seasoned diplomatic advisor. "I don't trust them," Hayes said as their shuttle approached the massive Council station. The structure hung in space like a metal spider, its long docking arms extending in all directions. "You don't have to trust them," Grant replied, straightening his uniform. "Just listen to what they have to say." The council representatives waited in a large chamber with high ceilings and windows that showed the stars. There were 7 of them, one from each council species. They sat at a curved table that put the Earth and Lyrian delegates at a lower position. The head council member stood. He was tall and thin with gray skin and 4 arms. "I am Thorval of the Palaxian Empire, senior council member. We welcome Earth's representatives." Hayes nodded but didn't smile. "Thank you for the invitation, senior member. We have been observing your new alliance with the Lyrians with great interest." Thorval continued. "It is unusual for a newly spacefaring species to form such quick bonds." "We found common ground," Grant said. "The Lyrians are peaceful, just as we wish to be." A different council member laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding together. "Humans? Peaceful. Your history suggests otherwise." Hayes leaned forward. "We've learned from our past. Now, I understand there are council military ships near Lyrian space. We'd like to know why." The council members exchanged glances. Simple exercises. Thorval said smoothly, "Nothing that should concern you." The meeting continued for hours. The council asked many questions about Earth but revealed little about themselves. They were particularly interested in human military capabilities. "We keep our defense information private," Hayes said firmly, "just as I'm sure you do." Meanwhile, far from the council station, Mary Garcia sat at her communications console aboard the U.S. Vigilant, which was patrolling near Lyrian space. She had been working for hours to break through strange interference patterns. "Something's not right," she muttered. Her fingers flew across the console as she isolated the signal. "This isn't natural interference. It's a jamming signal." Garcia called over her commanding officer. "Sir, someone's blocking all communications to the Lyrian homeworld." "Can you break through it?" he asked. "I'm trying, but it's advanced technology." Garcia worked frantically, trying different methods to pierce the jamming. Suddenly, her screen cleared, showing a brief transmission from a Lyrian outpost. What she saw made her blood run cold. Council warships were orbiting the Lyrian homeworld, firing on the planet below. "They're attacking," Garcia shouted. "The Council is bombing Lyria right now." Back at the Peace Summit, the meeting was wrapping up when Hayes' personal communicator vibrated against her wrist. It was an emergency signal from the Vigilant. Hayes stood abruptly. "Excuse me, council members. I need to check on an urgent matter." She stepped outside, followed by Grant. When they were alone, Hayes activated her secure communicator. "This is Hayes. Report." The voice of the Vigilance captain came through, tight with anger. "Admiral, the Council has launched a full-scale attack on Lyria. They're jamming all communications, but Garcia managed to break through briefly. It's a massacre. The Lyrians have almost no defenses." Hayes' face hardened. "Understood. Send all data to Earth Command immediately." She turned to Grant. "We need to leave now." When they returned to the chamber, Thorval smiled at them. "Is everything in order, Admiral?" Hayes looked at the council members with cold fury. "You knew. This entire meeting was a distraction while your forces attacked the Lyrian homeworld." The council members didn't deny it. Thorval simply stood, towering over Hayes. "The Lyrians serve a purpose in our galaxy. They were becoming too independent. And now so has Earth. This means war," Hayes said quietly. "If that is your choice," Thorval replied. "But know this, no species has ever challenged the Council and survived." Dr. Frank Johnson had been working in a Lyrian hospital for 6 months when the attack began. The first explosions shook the building, sending cracks racing across the ceiling. Dust filled the air. Everyone moved to the lower levels. Johnson shouted, helping his Lyrian colleagues guide patients to safety. From the hospital windows, he could see the Council warships in the sky. They were massive dark shapes against the blue, raining fire on the beautiful Lyrian cities. Buildings collapsed. Gardens burned. The sea near the coast boiled from the heat of the weapons. "Why are they doing this?" asked a young Lyrian doctor, her gills fluttering in distress. Johnson had no answer. He could only watch as the place he had come to love was destroyed piece by piece. Across the city, a council ground force landed and began rounding up survivors. Their soldiers were tall and heavily armored, with weapons that could stun or kill. They herded Lyrians into groups, separating those who looked strong enough to work from the others. Johnson and a small group of Lyrians hid in the hospital's underground storage rooms. They could hear the heavy footsteps of council soldiers above them, searching the building. "We need to get a message to Earth," Johnson whispered. "They need to know what's happening here." One of the older Lyrians, a communications engineer named Sivtar, nodded. "I might be able to use parts from our medical equipment to build a transmitter, but the Council is jamming all signals." "We have to try," Johnson insisted. While they worked on the transmitter, the attack continued. Day turned to night, but the sky remained bright with the fires of burning cities. The Council bombardment was relentless. In orbit above Lyria, Council Commander Drax watched the destruction with satisfaction. "Status report," he demanded of his second-in-command. 80% of major population centers have been neutralized," the officer reported. "Resistance is minimal. The Lyrians had no real defense systems." Drax nodded. "And the human presence? We've captured some, but there may be others hiding among the Lyrians. We're conducting thorough searches. Find them all," Drax ordered. "The Council wants no human witnesses to this operation." Meanwhile, in a small Council administrative outpost several systems away, Nancy Miller was on edge. She had been undercover in Council territory for almost a year, posing as a human trader willing to work with the Council. In reality, she was one of Earth's most skilled spies. Miller had access to the Council's communication network through her trading business. When reports of the Lyrian attack began flowing through the system, she knew she had to act. She waited until the outpost was quiet for the night cycle. Then she slipped into her private quarters and activated a hidden device in her room. "This is Starling," she whispered into the secure transmitter. "Priority Alpha message for Earth Command. The Council has launched a full-scale attack on the Lyrian homeworld. They are targeting civilian centers and have killed millions already." She attached data files she had stolen from the Council network, images of the attack, military orders, even declarations from Council leadership about making an example of the Lyrians. "The Council plans to occupy Lyria and enslave the survivors," she continued. "They're calling it population management, but it's genocide. They intend to use Lyrian medical knowledge while eliminating most of the population." Miller finished her transmission and carefully hid her equipment again. She knew the risks of what she had just done. If discovered, she would be executed immediately. But Earth needed to know the truth. Back on Lyria, Johnson and Sivtar finally completed their makeshift transmitter. They had no way of knowing if their signal would get through the jamming. "Earth, this is Dr. Frank Johnson on Lyria," he began, his voice shaking. "The Council is slaughtering everyone. Billions are dead. Please, if anyone receives this, Earth needs to know what happened here. The Council cannot be allowed to get away with this." The emergency meeting of Earth's Defense Council lasted for hours. President Patricia Anderson sat at the head of the table, her face grim as she reviewed the evidence of the Lyrian massacre. The images sent by Nancy Miller played on the large screen, showing Council ships bombarding Lyrian cities and soldiers rounding up survivors. 3 billion dead, Admiral William Davis said, his voice tight with anger. The Council hit every major Lyrian city at once. They specifically targeted civilian areas. President Anderson looked around the table. "Options. We recall all our people from Council space immediately," said the Foreign Secretary. "We've already started the process, but we need to move faster." And then, the President pressed. Admiral Davis stepped forward. "We activate Operation Thunderstrike." The room fell silent. Operation Thunderstrike was a contingency plan created when humans first learned about alien life. It prepared for full-scale war against a technologically superior enemy. "The Council believes we're weak," Davis continued. "They think we have a small fleet of exploration vessels, like the Relentless. They don't know about our real military capabilities. For years, Earth had been building warships in secret facilities throughout the solar system. The public knew about some vessels, but the most powerful ships remained hidden, waiting for a moment like this. If we do this, there's no going back," President Anderson warned. "We will be at war with the dominant power in the galaxy." "They already declared war when they massacred our allies," Davis replied. "They just don't know it yet." After a moment, Anderson nodded. "Activate Thunderstrike. The Council needs to answer for what they've done." Within hours, Earth's hidden fleet began to emerge from their concealed docks. Ships larger and more powerful than anything humans have publicly revealed moved into formation at the edge of the solar system. Admiral Davis took command aboard the fleet flagship, a massive warship called the U.S. Avenger. "Status report," he ordered as he stepped onto the bridge. "All ships reporting ready, Admiral," his second-in-command replied. "The fleet is at 98% combat readiness." Davis nodded with satisfaction. "And the rescue team?" Lieutenant Commander Eric Brown's team departed 6 hours ago on the stealth frigate Night Shadow. They're headed for Lyria to extract any survivors they can find. The Night Shadow was the fastest and most advanced stealth ship in Earth's fleet. It carried a team of 20 Special Forces soldiers led by Eric Brown, a veteran of Earth's most difficult rescue missions. As they approached Lyrian space, Brown gathered his team for a final briefing. "The Council has control of the planet, but they don't know we're coming. Our primary mission is to locate and extract Dr. Frank Johnson and any Earth personnel. Secondary mission is to rescue as many Lyrian survivors as possible, especially government officials and scientists." One of the soldiers raised a hand. "Sir, how are we supposed to find anyone on a planet that size, especially with Council forces everywhere?" Brown activated a holographic display showing a detailed map of the Lyrian capital city. "We received a weak transmission from Dr. Johnson's position 12 hours ago, and our spy in Council territory, Nancy Miller, has sent us the patrol schedules for Council forces. We'll insert here at the edge of the city, under cover of darkness." The Night Shadow slipped past the Council blockade undetected, its advanced stealth systems hiding it from enemy sensors. As they entered Lyria's atmosphere, the team could see the devastation below. Once beautiful cities were now smoking ruins. The oceans, normally a vibrant turquoise, were cloudy with ash and debris. "This isn't just an attack," Brown said quietly as they looked at the planet. "This is annihilation." His communications officer turned from her console with wide eyes. "Commander, I'm picking up a transmission from the surface. It's Dr. Johnson. He's alive, and he says he has a group of Lyrian survivors with him, including some government officials." For the first time since the mission began, Brown smiled. "Send him our coordinates. Tell him help is coming." Back on Earth, Admiral Davis addressed the assembled fleet. "Today we go to war. Not for conquest, not for glory, but for justice. The Council believed they could massacre our allies without consequences. They're about to learn how wrong they were." The Council shipyard at Nexus Prime was the largest in the galaxy. Hundreds of warships were built or repaired there each year. It was protected by defense platforms and a fleet of patrol vessels. The Council believed it was completely secure. They were wrong. Captain Laura Martinez sat in the command chair of the U.S. Defiant, a stealth carrier that was the pride of Earth's fleet. The ship and its battle group had been hiding behind a small moon for 6 hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Status report," Martinez ordered, her voice steady despite the tension on the bridge. "All fighter squadrons report ready for launch," her executive officer replied. "Weapon systems at full capacity. Stealth systems operating at peak efficiency. Martinez nodded. And the other ships in the battle group. The destroyers Valiant and Fearless are in position. The cruisers Liberty and Freedom are standing by. All ships report ready. Martinez took a deep breath. This would be the first major battle between human forces and the Council. The element of surprise was their greatest advantage. The Council had no idea that Earth possessed ships like the Defiant or weapons that could match their own. "Send the signal to all ships," Martinez ordered. "Operation First Strike is a go." The battle group moved silently toward the shipyard, still hidden by their advanced stealth technology. They were halfway to their target when Martinez gave her next order. "Launch fighters." The Defiant's launch bays opened, and 60 fighter craft shot into space. They were small, fast, and deadly, each armed with missiles specifically designed to penetrate Council shields. The fighters reached the outer perimeter of the shipyard before any alarm sounded. By then, it was too late. "All fighters, weapons free," Martinez commanded. "Hit their defense platforms first, then target the patrol ships." The Earth fighters struck with devastating precision. Defense platforms exploded in silent bursts of light and debris. Patrol ships, caught completely by surprise, barely had time to raise shields before missiles slammed into them. On the main Council station, Admiral Zex of the Council Defense Force watched in shock as his screens lit up with alerts. "What is happening?" he demanded. "We're under attack," his second-in-command reported, voice shaking. "Multiple targets, approaching from Sector 7. Who would dare attack Nexus Prime? Show me." The screen changed to show the Earth fighters, now joined by the larger ships of Martinez's battle group. The Defiant led the formation, its weapons tearing through the remaining patrol vessels. "Those are human ships," Zex said in disbelief. "Impossible. Their technology should be centuries behind ours." "Sir, they've destroyed all outer defenses," an officer reported. "They're heading for the shipyard docks. The capital ships under construction are defenseless." Zex slammed his fist on the console. "Launch all available ships. Protect those docks at all costs." Council ships rushed to defend the shipyard, but they were disorganized and unprepared. The Earth forces moved with coordination and purpose, following a battle plan they had practiced for months. "Captain, Council reinforcements approaching," Martinez's tactical officer reported. "Right on schedule," Martinez replied with a grim smile. "Bring the Defiant about. Target their flagship with the main cannon." The Defiant's main weapon was something the Council had never seen before. It fired a beam of energy so concentrated it could cut through almost any material. When it hit the Council flagship, the massive vessel split in two as if cut by a knife. "Direct hit," the tactical officer shouted as the crew cheered. "Stay focused," Martinez warned. "Target the next ship." For 2 hours, the battle raged across the shipyard. Earth ships darted between the massive Council vessels, using their superior speed and agility to avoid enemy fire while delivering devastating attacks of their own. By the time Martinez ordered the retreat, 12 Council capital ships had been destroyed, along with most of the shipyard's production facilities. "All ships, return to formation," she ordered. "Set course for the rendezvous point." As the Earth ships disappeared into the darkness of space, they left behind a scene of destruction unlike anything the Council had experienced in centuries. Their greatest shipyard was in ruins. Their best ships were destroyed or heavily damaged. And on the main Council station, Admiral Zex stared at the wreckage with dawning horror. "The humans," he whispered. "What have we awakened?" The Earth colony on Proxima Centauri was humanity's first outpost among the stars. 15,000 people called it home. They lived in domed cities on a planet that was still being terraformed. They were scientists, engineers, and families who had volunteered to build a new life beyond Earth. Now they were in danger. "Council warships detected entering the system," announced the colony's defense coordinator. "Multiple vessels, heavily armed. They'll reach us in less than 3 hours." Governor Richard Taylor, the colony's elected leader, immediately activated the emergency protocols. Alarms sounded throughout the domes. People hurried to shelter areas deep underground. "Have we contacted Earth?" Taylor asked as he strode into the colony's command center. "Yes, sir. Earth Command reports the Fourth Fleet is on the way, but they won't arrive for at least 4 hours." Taylor's face hardened. "Then we need to hold out until they get here. What defenses do we have?" The colony wasn't built for war. It had a small defense force and a few orbital platforms meant to protect against asteroids and space debris, not warships. But what the colonists lacked in weapons, they made up for in ingenuity. "Begin emergency preparations," Taylor ordered. "I want every engineer and scientist working on ways to strengthen our defenses." The colonists rallied quickly. Engineers modified mining lasers to serve as ground-to-space weapons. Scientists reprogrammed terraforming satellites to interfere with enemy targeting systems. Everyone who could hold a weapon volunteered for the defense force. When the Council ships arrived, they found a colony much better prepared than they expected. The first wave of Council landing craft encountered intense resistance. Modified mining lasers cut through their hulls. Repurposed terraforming satellites created atmospheric disturbances that threw off their aim. From his flagship, Council Commander Vex watched with growing frustration as the initial assault faltered. "These are just colonists," he raged. "How are they holding us back?" "Sir, the humans appear to have modified civilian equipment for military use," his tactical officer explained. "And they're fighting with unusual determination." Vex scowled. "Launch the second wave. Double the number of troops. I want that colony taken before the reinforcements arrive." On the surface, Governor Taylor and his people fought desperately. They knew they couldn't win alone, but every minute they held out gave the Fourth Fleet more time to reach them. In the void between stars, Vice Admiral Karen White pushed her ships to their limits. The Fourth Fleet was racing toward Proxima Centauri at maximum speed. "Status update from the colony," White asked her communications officer. "They're still fighting, Admiral. Heavy casualties. But they're holding." White nodded grimly. "Push the engines harder. We need to get there now." In the colony's main defense center, Technical Sergeant Ryan Mitchell was studying sensor readings of the Council ships when he noticed something unusual. "They're shield generators," he muttered. "There's a pattern to how they cycle." Mitchell had spent years studying alien technology. Now, as he watched the Council ship's energy signatures, he saw what no one else had noticed before. "Governor," he called to Taylor, "I think I found a weakness in their ship design. Their shields cycle every 42 seconds, creating a momentary gap on their ventral side. If we time our attacks precisely, we might be able to breach their hulls." Taylor immediately ordered their remaining weapons to be synchronized. The next time the Council ships launched landing craft, the colonists were ready. They fired their weapons in perfect coordination. Lasers sliced through the momentary gaps in the shields, causing critical damage to several Council vessels. Commander Vex couldn't believe what was happening. "How are they penetrating our shields? This is impossible." The battle raged for hours. The colonists used Mitchell's discovery to inflict serious damage on the Council forces, but they were still outnumbered and outgunned. Dome after dome was breached. The defense center took a direct hit. Governor Taylor was wounded but refused to leave his post. "We just need to hold out a little longer," he told his people. "Help is coming." Just as the last defenses were about to fail, new alarms sounded on the Council ships. "Sir," Vex's tactical officer shouted, "multiple warp signatures detected. Large fleet approaching." The Fourth Fleet had arrived. Vice Admiral White's ships burst into the system, weapons already charged and targeting the Council vessels. "All ships, engage the enemy," White ordered. "Protect that colony at all costs." 3 months into the war, Earth scientists were working day and night to develop new weapons against the Council. The discovery of the shield vulnerability by Technical Sergeant Ryan Mitchell had given them a starting point, but they needed something more powerful to turn the tide of the war. Dr. Olivia Scott stood in a laboratory deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her, dozens of scientists examined pieces of Lyrian technology that had been rescued during Lieutenant Commander Brown's mission. The Lyrians were peaceful, but their medical technology was centuries ahead of ours, Scott explained to Admiral Davis, who had come to check on their progress. They developed ways to heal at the cellular level. We've adapted those same principles, but instead of healing cells, we're disrupting them. She pointed to a device on the table. It was about the size of a small suitcase, with glowing blue components inside. We call it Nemesis, Scott said. It doesn't attack ships directly. Instead, it targets the energy patterns in Council shield systems and disrupts them completely. No cycling, no weaknesses to exploit. The shields simply fail. Admiral Davis picked up the device. How effective is it? In our tests, it disabled all Council shield configurations within 30 seconds. The range is limited, about 500 meters, but if we can get close enough to their command ships. Davis nodded. You'll lead the Special Forces team to deploy it. Scott looked surprised. Sir, I'm a scientist, not a soldier. You understand the technology better than anyone. And before you joined this project, you were one of our best special operations officers. I haven't forgotten your service record, Commander Scott. 3 days later, Commander Scott and her team of 12 Special Forces soldiers prepared to depart on the stealth ship Shadowhawk. Their mission was to infiltrate the Council's Central Command Station and deploy the Nemesis device. The plan is simple, Scott told her team as they studied holographic maps of their target. We approach under stealth, dock with an external maintenance board, and make our way to the central power distribution node. Once Nemesis is activated, we have exactly 10 minutes to get back to our ship before the station's security systems reboot. One of the soldiers raised his hand. What about Council personnel? Avoid engagement if possible, Scott replied. But if discovered, do what you must to protect the mission. As they prepared to depart, Admiral Davis gave Scott one final message. Earth forces will launch coordinated attacks across all Council strongholds the moment Nemesis activates. This is our turning point, Commander. Don't fail. The journey to the Council command station took 2 weeks of careful navigation through enemy territory. The Shadowhawk's stealth systems kept them hidden, but they had several close calls with Council patrols. Finally, they reached their target, a massive space station shaped like a wheel with 8 spokes, rotating slowly against the backdrop of stars. Approach vector locked in, the pilot said. We'll reach the maintenance dock in 6 minutes. Scott checked her weapon and the Nemesis device one last time. All team members, final equipment check. We go in fast and quiet. The Shadowhawk docked without being detected. Scott's team moved through the maintenance tunnels like ghosts, avoiding patrols and security sensors. They were halfway to the power distribution node when alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. We've been detected, Scott said. Move faster. Council security forces converged on their position. The Special Forces team fought back with precision and skill, but the Council had numbers on their side. We're not going to make it to the target, Scott's second-in-command said as they took cover behind a barrier, enemy fire hitting all around them. Scott looked at the station schematics on her wrist computer. There's another way. If we can reach that auxiliary power relay, it's connected to the same network. The effect won't be as widespread, but it should disrupt their main defense systems. Fighting their way through the station, the team suffered casualties. 3 soldiers fell to enemy fire. 2 more were wounded but insisted on continuing. Finally, they reached the auxiliary power room. Scott quickly connected the Nemesis device to the power network. Device armed, she announced. Activation in 10 seconds. As Council forces broke through the barricaded door, the Nemesis device pulsed with blue energy. A wave of disruption spread through the station. Lights flickered. Systems failed. And throughout Council space, Earth forces launched their coordinated attack against suddenly vulnerable targets. 1 year after the Lyrian massacre, The war had changed completely. With their shields vulnerable to the Nemesis technology, Council ships were no longer invincible. Earth forces pushed deeper into Council space, liberating worlds and destroying military bases. Supreme Commander Jason Thompson stood on the bridge of the U.S. Retribution, Earth's largest and most powerful warship. The massive vessel was the flagship of humanity's combined fleets, now gathered for the final assault on the Council homeworlds. "All fleet elements report ready, Commander," said his executive officer. "The Nemesis devices have been distributed to all ships. Ground assault teams are prepared for deployment." Thompson nodded. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. "Begin the operation." 300 Earth warships jumped into the Council home system. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, armed with weapons and technology that had been refined throughout a year of brutal conflict. The Council's defense fleet moved to intercept them, but their movements were desperate and disorganized. They knew their shields were vulnerable. They knew Earth ships could destroy them with ease. "Council vessels approaching," reported the tactical officer. "They're transmitting a message." "Put it through," Thompson ordered. The main screen showed the face of Thorval, the senior council member who had orchestrated the Lyrian massacre. "Human Commander," Thorval said, his voice lacking its former arrogance. "We wish to discuss terms of surrender." Thompson's face remained hard. "You had your chance for diplomacy when you invited our people to a peace summit while your ships murdered our allies. We are prepared to offer significant concessions," Thorval continued desperately. "Territorial rights, technology exchanges. The only terms we will accept are unconditional surrender." Thompson interrupted. "All Council leaders will face trial for genocide. All occupied worlds will be liberated, and the Council as it exists now will be dissolved forever." Thorval's face darkened with anger. "We will never accept such terms. The Council has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We will not be dictated to by primitives who barely learn to travel between stars." "Then we have nothing more to discuss," Thompson said coldly. "All ships, engage the enemy." The battle for the Council homeworld began. Earth ships tore through the Council's defenses. Fighters and bombers launched from carriers, targeting key installations on the planets below. Lieutenant Amy Powell led the ground assault on the Council's capital city. Her troops faced fierce resistance, but with air support from Earth fighters, they steadily pushed toward the government district. Council forces retreating from the eastern sector, Powell reported over the comm system. "We're approaching the Central Command building." Inside that building, the 7 Council leaders were in chaos. "Our defensive line is collapsing," one of them shouted. "We need to evacuate now." Thorval looked at his fellow Council members with disgust. "Cowards. After 10,000 years of rule, you would run at the first real challenge to our power." But even as he spoke, the building shook from nearby explosions. The humans were getting closer. In orbit, the battle was ending. The last major Council warship exploded in a ball of fire as the U.S. Retribution's main weapons struck its reactor. "Council space defenses neutralize," reported Thompson's tactical officer. "Ground forces have secured the main government district." Thompson turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to all Council worlds. The war is over. The Council government has fallen. Earth forces are coming to liberate all occupied territories." Within hours, Council resistance collapsed across the galaxy. News of their leader's capture spread quickly. Worlds that had been oppressed for centuries saw a chance for freedom. 1 month later, a ceremony was held on what remained of the Lyrian homeworld. A memorial had been built to honor the billions who died in the massacre. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to witness the signing of a new alliance. Thompson stood with the surviving Lyrian Prime Minister, Kelfar's son. Together they unveiled a monument made of stone from both Earth and Lyria. "Today we remember those who were lost," Thompson said to the assembled crowd. "And we promise that such a tragedy will never happen again. The new alliance we form today is built on respect and cooperation not domination and fear. As the ceremony ended, Earth ships hung in the sky above, not as conquerors, but as protectors. The Council had massacred Earth's allies, believing there would be no consequences. Instead, they had awakened a power that ended their 10,000-year rule in just 1 year of war. Earth's vengeance was complete. Now came the harder task of